All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technical details of GP-ARGO, of how it came to be and how it was executed. So GP-ARGO kind of felt to me like, you get a node, everybody gets a node. The technology did evolve over the lifetime of the project. It definitely wasn't what we proposed is definitely not what we ended up with. And how to get at the later slides, I talk about a little bit more about how do you get buy-in into GP-ARGO. And so I talk a lot about our visualizations that we've put together. I don't know how many CIOs that I've had message me from these smaller institutions that want to say, who's running on my GP-ARGO node? What science am I enabling? And these are some of the visualizations that we put together so that they could easily access this information and keep it updated. And one thing I want to note, this is an excerpt from Frank's slide yesterday. We go under the name of Great Plains Network in the OSG accounting, but we are one of the top contributors to the OSPool. And this is just, when we say Great Plains Network, this is all the GP-ARGO nodes put together, both the ones that were purchased by CC Star and the ones that were added later by institutions that wanted to join GP-ARGO. So one of the difficult things, especially at the beginning, was shipping these nodes out to the different institutions. I believe Dan had a comment to me that this is the first proposal that he's ever had shipping costs as part of the budget because he had to ship these nodes out to all these different nodes. But in this case, we didn't actually ship it using like a commercial person. We had a sysadmin from Kansas State bring the node up to my house in Omaha. And then we had the sysadmin from South Dakota, from Vermilion, come down, spend the weekend with his wife in Omaha, and then picked up the node on the way out of town back up South Dakota. And so my house was a storage locker for a couple of days with this node. And so, yeah, that's actually a picture of Ryan from.
Yeah, did you power it up while running some jobs while it's waiting? No.
I think my wife would have been upset about the noise of this thing. It's not a quiet machine, and also electricity costs. So no, I did not. So when we first shipped the nodes, we configured them on site at KSU with some disk imaging and some local scripts, and then we also include a WireGuard VPN so that OIS would call back to the KSU so that we can always have access to it, even if the institution's not allowing incoming into the node itself. We always had access to the node through this VPN that we connected. When we first deployed it, it was all hand scripts and disk imaging, and then we moved over to Ansible. And so we deployed the OSG pilot container and various other things with Ansible. We're working on contributing this recipe back to the OSG so other people can use it as well. So some of the things that Ansible deployed, the pilot container, CMFS, the NVIDIA container driver, which changed over the lifetime of this project. Crony, we had a lot of trouble with time synchronization between all these different sites, and so we had to synchronize within the collaboration. And then, of course, Grafana for the visualization. I'll talk more about that later. So the OSG was deployed on GP-ARGO through the OSG pilot container, and I know we haven't really talked about that much in this meeting so far. I think it's talked about later on. I don't know where Brian Lynn is, but I think he talks about it later. So it's a Docker container that once started, it will accept OSPool jobs. It's a self-registration process. You get a token, and that authenticates you to the OSPool, and then jobs start to flow. It supports GPU jobs if the node has a GPU. In the case of GP-ARGO, we do. And so, as I mentioned before, we wanted to provide a method of justifying these nodes on these campuses, especially to like the CIOs and to the IT leaders on campus. And so it was important to answer some of these questions of like what science is using GP-ARGO, how is my institution's node utilized, and who is using my institution's node. And so we came up with a dashboard. So this is the line that was mentioned a couple times yesterday, right down what's roughly the Missouri River. It goes a little bit over to the east then, but runs down. So these are all the GP-ARGO nodes and all the sites that they're located in, all within GPN. And then at the bottom, we have these like summary statistics. These are core hours contributed over the lifetime of the project. These are a number of OSG projects that have run on GP-ARGO, and this is the number of institutions that have used GP-ARGO nodes. And so this is all information from the OSG accounting system as well.
So these numbers are over what time period?
Over the lifetime of GP-ARGO, so it's probably like the last 2 years-ish, two
I
and a half
see.
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
It may be useful to have some kind of last year, last X years or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And then Dan showed this before, but another visualization. Again, this is the link to the dashboard, but which is a live dashboard. But this is something that we are able to give to the CIOs and the IT leaders at the different campuses. They get to see the name of their campus over on the left. These are where all the nodes are located. And then these are the projects that are actually running on the nodes. And so you can actually scroll down. You can see all the institutions, the field of science that are using the GP-ARGO. And then because some of these universities are a little bit competitive, we actually put the core hours by facility. And so that Wichita State can claim they're the largest ones, and then it goes on from there. And this is just a bigger one that we provide to the universities, again, showing the usage by university. So part of the monitoring that we give to these people is we also give them very detailed information about what projects are actually running on these GP-ARGO nodes. And this is this is from OSG, so it gives you the OSG project name, the field of science, what the institution it's from, and then the PI names. So it really makes it personal that these people are actually running on these GP-ARGO nodes. And then one question that they ask is what ran at my institution. And so this is, excuse me, this is from University of Arkansas's GP-ARGO node. And so what we can do is we can tell you exactly the field of science that ran by either the NSF field of science or by the field of science using the OSG. The core hours, like what institutions actually ran at the University of Arkansas. So we can drill down to the specific node, and we can tell you what ran on this specific node over the course of the lifetime of that node. Some of the difficulties that we've had with GP-ARGO, working with different universities, as Dan mentioned, that was the most difficult thing, especially with networking. For example, one university, who shall not be named, blocked all outgoing connections a couple months ago. So the OSG requires outgoing for data transfers, monitoring, management of resources. The site offered to whitelist IPs, which is very difficult to do for the OSG. We gave them a list, but you know, there's always going to be failures now on that specific node because you don't know what's going to happen. And this is part of the relationships that we've created in GPN. We're working with this university to try to, you know, kind of lessen, give this node or these research more of a DMZ type feel, so that it's actually able to access the internet a little bit easier. But again, we're still working with this. Another difficulty we had was GPUs all the way from the host to the container. So there's a lot of layers of abstraction between the GPU on the host all the way up to like an OSG container. And so the OSG pilot container, when we first started using it, it already had the GPU support, so that was good. The NVIDIA software, they actually packaged something to export GPUs up to the container, but that changed mid-project of how they were doing the packaging, how they were doing the software. And so we had to completely redo that. And that's something we used Ansible for a lot. Now, originally, if running on the GPU-enabled node, only GPU-enabled jobs would run on that node. That was the initial configuration of the OSG container. And again, we worked with OSG. We loosened that policy such that the pilot container will run non-GPU jobs, just use the CPU if there's no GPU jobs available. We ended up seeing some idle nodes whenever we ran the OSG container, just because it was looking for GPU jobs, and if they're not available, it would just sit idle. And so we'd rather use the CPU in that case. So the future, Dan already mentioned the GP engine. So I'm a co-PI on the GP engine. It's the primary is through University of Missouri with Grant Scott. And so it started just a few days ago, on July 1st. And so the plan is to integrate the resources with the National Research Platform. These are all the locations of the nodes of where they're going, and then contribute to the OSG through the NRP. So, and so the goal is to run sort of these like Jupyter notebooks and these Kubernetes type workflows on these NRP resources, such that they can target their local institution's node and then expand out if needed. That's my slides. Thank you very much.